Finance with instructions.
I ask that further reading of the motion be dispensed with.
Without objection.
I want to know if my colleagues on the other side of the aisle believe that there are some Americans so wealthy that perhaps they don't need a tax break at the expense of health care and food for our most vulnerable constituents. So I'll kick off this dialogue by raising a common sense idea. We can save health care for millions of Americans if we strip out tax giveaways for individuals making more than $10 million. Yes or no? President Trump claims to fight for the working class, yet we have before us a bill that gives tax breaks to the top 1% that will be paid in cuts to Medicaid, SNAP, and more, programs that serve hard-working Americans. So I ask, do you want community hospitals or another giant mansion for a billionaire? Should we save health care and nutrition assistance for millions of Americans by stopping giant tax giveaways at $10 million? If my colleagues on the other side want to put their money where their mouth is, then they'll say yes. I yield.
Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President. Well, Senator Kennedy talked about Scooter and Senator Scott talked about Bubba. I want to talk about Jelly Roll. Turns out in a committee hearing with Jelly Roll, the country music rock singer, he grew up in Antioch, Tennessee. And I said, do you remember Countryside Village? He said, well, they call it Countryside Meadow. I said, I used to live there. He said, I did too. It's a trailer park that's still standing on Richards Road in Nashville, Tennessee. Back in the late 70s and early 80s, I was living in that trailer park, and I was living with a family on the economic bubble. And I remember back then when President Reagan came in and he offered tax cuts, that everybody characterized those tax cuts as cuts for the rich. But let me tell you all, when we saw those tax cuts implemented, Thom Tillis and Jelly Roll ended up finding opportunities beyond our wildest imagination. So it turns out that those so-called tax cuts for the rich back then lifted me out of that situation into a high-tech career and now standing here before you in the U.S. Senate. This and several other amendments are amendments that are standing in the way of other people getting lifted out of that same trailer park. So ladies and gentlemen, on our side of the aisle and those over there, I hope you will join us. Shout loudly no. Thank you, Mr. President.
The question is on the motion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
No.
Noes appear to have it. Noes do have it. Motion is not agreed to. Senator from Arizona.
Mr. President, I have a motion to commit at the desk.
Clerk will report.
The senator from Arizona, Mr. Kelly, moves to commit the bill H.R. 1 to the Committee on Finance with instructions.
I ask that further reading of the motion be dispensed with.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I don't think we're looking to take any money out of Jelly Roll's pocket here. But giving a tax break to the richest people and most profitable corporations is a choice. And paying for it by kicking 17 million Americans off their health insurance is a choice. None of this is set in stone. Every one of us gets a vote here, a choice. We can help parents be able to take their kids to the doctor. We can keep seniors in their nursing homes. Or some rich guy, not Jelly Roll, can get another private jet. We can save health care for millions of Americans if we strip out tax giveaways for individuals making more than $100 million a year. Yes or no?
Senator, North Carolina.
The reality is, let's fast forward now to 2017. I was in this chamber when we passed TCJA. And after we passed this, again, everybody was arguing this was all tax policy for the rich. But we unleashed an American economy that we have not seen in our history. In fact, it was better than the tax cuts of the Reagan era. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to get every bit of what we did in 2017 back on the books because people are not understanding the pro-growth nature of this tax policy. I hope my colleagues will vote loudly yes once again. No? No once again.
Meeting.
Senator's time's expired. Question is on the motion. All in favor say aye. All opposed, nay. No! Noes appear to have it. The noes do have it. Clerk will report. Motion is not agreed to. Clerk will report. No? Clerk will not report. Senator from Connecticut.
President, I have a motion to commit at the desk.
Clerk will report.
Senator from Connecticut, Mr. Murphy, moves to commit the bill H.R. 1 to the Committee on Finance of the Senate with instructions to report back the same to the Senate in 3 days, not counting.
I'd ask that the further reading of the motion be dispensed with.
Without objection.
Mr. President, at the foundation of this bill is something very simple, the most massive transfer of wealth from the poor to the rich in the history of the country. That's essentially what we're talking about here. But that's really bad policy, but just as importantly, it is also deeply, deeply immoral. This bill is going to ruin people's lives. There are going to be moms who are going to watch their kids go hungry because of the cuts in SNAP. People are going to die when 17 million people lose their health care. And for what? To give an average $250,000 tax cut to the wealthiest families in America. We have tried to convince our colleagues to throw less people off their health care or to make the nutritional cuts a little bit easier to stomach, but they won't do it. So now we're just trying to address the other side of the immorality. This amendment would just say no tax cuts for people making over $500 million a year. If you are going to ruin people's lives by kicking them off their health care or cutting their food stamps, don't make the moral injury even worse by padding the pockets of the richest people in the country. Tax cuts for people making over $500 million a year while you throw 17 million people off their health care, yes or no?
Senator from North Carolina.
Mr. President, I'm guessing, well, they're probably focused a little bit less on me because I made an announcement this weekend, but you can already tell that this narrative is about how we're all about the wealthy. And I've already stipulated I have concerns with the Medicaid bill. You all know where I am on that. But we're talking about the tax bill. And there is nothing in this tax bill that I think falls short of extraordinary opportunity for economic growth that lifts up the very people that I grew up with. And for that reason, once again, I hope you will vote loudly no.
Question is on the motion. All in favor say aye. All opposed, no. No. The noes appear to have it. The noes do have it. The motion is not agreed to.
Mr. President.
Senator from Maine.
I want to respond. We can solve this problem and solve the problem of people in trailer parks by limiting the tax cuts to people making $400,000 a year and less. That would cut the cost of this bill by 60%. It would also obviate the necessity of kicking 17 million people off of health care and thousands of young people and people across the country from SNAP. You can do this and give tax relief to the middle class without the unnecessary tax relief in this bill that goes to the richest people in our country. So my amendment is really simple. If you think people making $1 billion a year need and deserve a tax break, and also if you want to give a really good ad to these guys in November of 2026, vote no on the amendment and say that billionaires, not billionaires, people earning $1 billion need and deserve a tax break. I urge a yes vote.
Mr. President.
Does the senator wish to call up his motion?
I have a motion to commit at the desk.
Clerk report.
The senator from Maine, Mr. King, moves to commit the bill H.R. 1 to the
I ask that
committee.
further reading of the motion be dispensed with.
Without objection.
Mr. President.
Senator from North Carolina.
Mr. President, in truth, you could see this sort of upping of the ante. These are the gimmicks that we play. when we want to get a show vote, especially with somebody who may be running for reelection. We know that this isn't going to materially change things. Now, my friend from Maine knows where I am on health care, and I hope that we get things fixed. But this exercise, by virtue of it being a voice vote, tells you all you need to know about this process. And for that reason, I would suggest just one more loud no vote.
Questions on the motion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. No. The noes appear to have it. The noes do have it. Motion is not agreed to.
Mr. President,
Senator from California.
I have a motion to commit at the desk.
Clerk will report.
The senator from California, Mr. Padilla, moves to commit the bill H.R. 1 to the Committee on Finance of the Senate.
I ask that further reading of the motion be dispensed with.
Without objection.
Colleagues on the other side of the aisle, I know that you take great pleasure in criticizing the federal deficit under Democratic administrations. But the numbers don't lie. The biggest driver of the ballooning national debt has been Republican tax cuts for the wealthy and large corporations. And despite the parliamentary gymnastics that are being played here, our Republican colleagues know that this bill is adding an additional $3.5 trillion to the deficit over the next 10 years. Why else would they have included a piece of the bill to raise the debt limit by $5 trillion if this bill saved money as they claim? So if Republicans really do want to balance the budget or reduce the deficit, let's start by guaranteeing that this measure is at least deficit neutral. That's exactly what this amendment would do. I ask for your aye vote and reserve my time.
Senator from South Carolina.
Yes, CBO tells us if we adopt current policy for taxes, we will save $507 billion. The deficit will go down by $507 billion if we do this. In 2012, I was here. The Bush tax cuts were going to expire in December of 2012. President Obama sat down with Republicans, and they came up with a way to extend those tax cuts by not passing a new law. They called it the alternative fiscal scenario that CBO said is basically current policy. So alternative fiscal scenario in Latin means current policy. So we're doing what they did then. We're just doing it without any help from y'all, because y'all will never do anything to make sure taxes go down. So we're going to make sure they go down forever. Current policy is good tax policy. Stick with the bill we wrote. You're going to be happy to reduce the deficit and make sure people's taxes don't go up tomorrow, the next day, forever. Good policy. Current policy is good tax policy.
How much time
I'm
do
done.
I have left?
Senator's time has expired. Questions on the motion? Sufficient second? There appears to be. Clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Alsobrooks. Ms. Baldwin. Mr. Banks.